Nile, on the west bank where the sun sets the necropolises, the temples, the pyramids. This is the city of the dead. On the bank where the sun rises, the cities of the living sprawl out. Cairo is 1,000 years old. The metropolis of the Nile, which has grown into Africa's largest city, has burst at every seam, even spanning the river. Buildings were erected in haste. Bridges and walkways are suspended over the streets. Today, Cairo has a population of 13 million, and it increases by nearly 1 million people a year. By the year 2000, at this rate of growth, the town will have to house and feed 20 million men and women in a space hemmed in by 2 deserts. 15% more vehicles every year despite the recent construction of an underground railway. Pollution is among the worst in the world. Nonetheless, it's a human city, with a welcoming hustle and bustle, generally peaceful, but also just as liable to explode at any moment. Every day, 40,000 children go out to pick up refuse around the city, loading up their donkey carts. A whole corporation of rag and bone merchants of school age. From Tahrir to the old Muslim Khan al-Khalili district, teacher rubbed shoulder with fellah, the poor with the rich, shopkeeper with civil servant. After lecturing, a university professor may become a taxi driver or a shopkeeper. Survival is what it's all about. In 1983, the Khan al-Khalili district and the Muslim University of Al-Azhar were celebrating their millennium. Al-Azhar the Brilliant was founded at a time when neither the University of Oxford nor the Sorbonne existed. Today, education in Egypt is free of charge. There are 10 million school-age children in the country, nearly 25% of the population. The West Bank, Al-Giza, Cairo's residential suburb, going right out to the pyramids. Amid the traffic jams, thousands of people come here every day to relax among the camel drivers, the horsemen, the cabs and buses, full with tourists from Europe, America, Japan, or Saudi Arabia. A somewhat laughable masquerade where foreigners don't really recognize their pyramids. But the superb necropolises of Kefren, Mycerinos, and particularly Cheops have been preserved, almost miraculously. Cheops, the world's most impressive tomb, built 4,600 years ago on the orders of a megalomaniac pharaoh conscious of his power and his immortality, God on earth. 450 feet high, 2,300,000 blocks of granite, a beam of petrified light carrying the pharaoh after his death up to the sun. Secret passages lead to an inside corridor up to the chamber belonging to the queen, then a long gallery leading to the king's funeral chamber. It is said that for the Egyptians, the Great Pyramid served as an initiation temple, or even an astronomical observatory. In fact, it was the dwelling place of eternity, desired to be inviolable, but plundered from the earliest times. Inside, nothing. Not a single inscription. Only an empty sarcophagus, doubtlessly profaned ages ago. Is this the sarcophagus of Pharaoh Cheops? No one can be sure. Then, where would the real royal chamber be? Believing that they had discovered abnormalities in the layout of the galleries and the chambers, some French architects made drill holes in the walls. They discovered cavities, but these turned out to be filled up with sand. Afterwards, other openings were studied by Japanese researchers. Americans were to follow, then Argentinians. The secret of the pyramids still remains an enigma. Abu Sir, south of Giza, a 5th dynasty monument. Meidum, a stepped pyramid ascribed to King Snefru, and the most ancient stone monument in the world, the Saqqara Pyramid, built by the architect Imhotep 4,700 years ago. For centuries, there were to be dug out in the shadows of the pharaoh's tombs the burial places, the mastabas, of the nobles and high-ranking dignitaries. In 1860, the French archaeologist Mariette discovered in Saqqara the superb mastaba of Ti, high priest of the temples under King Nuseri. In the inside chamber, the walls are covered with frescoes, painted 2,500 years before Christ. Shipbuilding, hunting scenes, fishing, and offerings on incredibly well-preserved bas-reliefs. A hippopotamus hunting scene in a clump of papyrus. As he comes through, wounded by 2 spears, the hippopotamus snaps at a crocodile. Carving up an antelope, using flint knives. The hieroglyphics all around provide the details. In the mastaba of Tahotep, the ancient inspector of the royal pyramids, was found an unbelievable scene of a bird hunt. The hunters, lying on their backs, energetically tighten the net, while others lay hand on geese and wild ducks. A procession of donkeys being led to sacrifice. At the time, it was thought that the donkey was in cahoots with Seth, representing the forces of evil. Cattle herd moves along his beasts, one of which has been subjected to the ritual distorting of the horns. Cattle were often depicted with irony, even if man was seen carrying the younger animals on his back to ford a river. A bearer of offerings. And in the shipyard of the ancient empire, papyrus boats were built. At that time, there was a proliferation of papyrus along the banks of the Nile. Papyrus even became the symbol of Lower Egypt. The delta swampland was fished using draw nets, hoop nets, landing nets. And in the dense vegetation, on the banks, various types of hunting went on, with harpoons or boomerangs being used. Papyruses grew 10 feet tall. They have now totally disappeared, with the exception of a few experimental plantations. In the past, papyrus was used for building huts, making boats or ropes. Paper was made from papyrus fiber. It was cut up, laid out in 2 layers, and then crushed with a mallet. These sheets were rot-proof and could stand up to the weathering of millennia, and lend themselves to the writing of men, or for messages to the gods. On the day of the Last Judgment, Anubis and Tot were weighing hearts. Nothing shall be forgotten, as the ancient texts have it. Those who arrive here stainless shall be like the gods, masters of eternity. Erected above the chaos of the world, temples were also designed to last an eternity. At Thebes, the capital of the new empire, 40 rams sitting like sphinxes guard the temple of Ammon, the uncreated creator. To get into the temple, one went through porches and pylons until one reached the sanctuary. Only the pharaoh and the priests were allowed